And I got to tell you, man, my man Randy Cross is looking more and more like Moses every day. And I'm very proud to bring him in. I like about Randy because Randy gives us his prophet, and he's a prophet and tells us a little bit about the NFL. How you doing, Moses Cross?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Dan. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's funny. I'm going to ask you a question out of the gate here. If you had to build a football team around Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts, who would you build your football team around?
Well, I'd be honest with you. I think I'd probably go about it very similar ways to what the Eagles and the Niners have done. They've started things out in front of them. That offensive line is solid as hell. They got one of the best blocking and receiving tight ends going in the game, and they've sprinkled in all the talent guys around them. If there's one guy that makes that whole thing go besides Brock Purdy, it'd probably be McCaffrey in the way that he can run at running back. I think what he can do is highly unusual. There's people paying some running backs a lot of money that can't do the things that McCaffrey can do.
Do you think Barkley brings that same dynamic now to the Eagle offense? And I'm not saying he's Christian McCaffrey with the ability he has, but he has a similar skill set, Randy, that he catches the ball. Now, the last 4 years, because of the knee injury, hasn't been quite as productive. 2 years ago, he had 1,300 yards. He looked back. This past season, I don't know what it was, contract, team bad, not a lot of talent around him. But could he bring that same dynamic to that Eagle offense?
Hey, he's not quite as sudden. He's not quite, as elusive, in spots and kind of hard to get a solid hit on as McCaffrey is. But, I put him right there with the best in the league, and he's got a group in front of him. That's even with Jason Kelce retiring, that's a badass group at offensive line. And he will he'll get in training camp and he'll be giggling like a 10-year-old schoolgirl in training camp, getting a run behind those guys, because he's going to notice a distinct difference, that the game is a lot easier when you've got the big boys in front of you.
Sorry, Randy. Kelce's not retired. He thinks he is. Okay. He thinks he is. But now that they got Barkley in there, man, I'm gonna tell you this. I say week 8, if there's a nick or two to Cam Jurgens, I don't know, man. How do you, if you're Howie Roseman, not pick the phone up and go, hey man, I'll tell you what we'll do. They offered him $14 million to come back and he passed on it.
Yeah.
I mean, Randy, did you struggle with that a little bit? Because you quit after the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, in Miami.
Right.
When you knew you had that team coming back the following year, and I know Bill bailed, but did you think about it coming back the next year, or were you finished?
Yeah, I think a lot of me was done. $14 million might have gotten me to come back from that. I'd have come back for the 14th year for that. And my contract was up. I was the third or fourth highest paid lineman in the league, and I said, nah. I'm going to move on in my life and go into TV and do some other stuff and get a chance to see my kids and all that. But I can see where it would be difficult, and I wouldn't blame them for 1 second, especially if you happen to tune into the Kelce brothers podcast and you notice that he's keeping the heft. If he doesn't just do a crash diet like a lot of guys do when they get out, and he keeps the spirit moving, especially you can tell he's lifting and he's working out and all that, that's when you aren't fully retired.
Only offensive lineman could spot that, because Joe Thomas said the same thing to me last night. He goes, Sills, right away I lost 75 pounds.
Yeah.
Kelce's still looking like he's eating the Hershey bars, and he's still looking like he's having – that don't look like a half a sandwich guy right now. He's still putting down them wedges, and I'm like, so what are you saying? He goes, I don't think he's put the thing down right away.
No, that's a great observation by Joe, because Joe's one of those guys that he disappeared.
He did.
He just disappeared. And Jason's still got the axe handle ass working. So he's, as long as he's got that, he's still going to be a threat because he can move.
Sorry, dude, I'm going to have to give him kudos over you at center, because I saw something that he did that I don't believe that you could ever do. Hold a beer, jump out of a suite with zero spillage, with no shirt on, gun it, and then leap back in to the suite in Buffalo. You have to admit, for a center like that at his 12, 13 years, that had to be one of the most impressive things you've seen.
Yeah, when I had my squad in that 800 or so pound range, I had a little spring, at least a little bolt in my legs. But that was when he jumped out. I'm sitting there going, boy, that guy's he's jumping into the Buffalo crowd to drink. I'm going, well, at least he's got company in that crowd. But then when he just kind of put his hands on the rail and jumped back in, I went, ooh, that's impressive. That's pretty good.
Hey, Randy, I'm glad I went there a little bit here now with you, because as a center, I think you're the most underrated center during your era in the history of the league, and I'll tell you why. Everybody else is getting Hall of Fame consideration. I think Harris Barton gets a little conversation, but you get none. And somebody blocked for Joe, and Roger Craig and Jerry Rice and Steve Young. Somebody blocked for those guys, and you were a focal point on those Super Bowl teams, and especially the first Super Bowl when you had none of those guys.
Yeah,
on that team.
The first two Super Bowls, Dan, I was a guard. I was leading sweeps and trapping and everything else. I was a center by the time the last one came along. But I played guard 9.5 years and center 3.5 years.
Oh, so when I played against you, you were a center. So that was like the back end of your career.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah, Fred Quillen had blown out his knee in the middle of the 87.
And Bruce Collier was the other guy? Or was it Sapolo?
Well, the guards were Jesse Sapolo and Guy McIntyre.
Yeah, that's right.
When I moved in the center, yeah.
What do you think of Kelce's career at center?
I love it. It's you look at the things that they're able to do because of you have a guy like that inside that could get out and move. And it's one thing to get out and move. A lot of guys can get out and run and run around cones and all that combine crap. But he got out there and he arrived in a nasty mood and was able to just drill people, and they knew it when he was coming out on them. So I think that was the difference. The ability to stick and then do something with a defender is what separated him. I thought he was really good. There's been a whole series of guys. I thought the earliest guy that really did that a lot was Dwight Stevenson. He was highly. I mean, I watched him abuse Michael Carter, and nobody abused Michael Carter. Nobody in the league.
I thought Michael Carter was the best nose in the nose era.
Yeah, and he was something. But he was the only guy that was doing. And you got to remember, Dwight was doing that back in the late 70s and 80s. So you fast forward, and he's able to do that now. It's very impressive, and I think it's something that. Even now, you watch college, you don't see many internal guys, doing a whole lot of that. They'll do some backside pulling on powers and whatnot, and counters, but you don't see a lot of centers doing what Jason can do.
You think Jason's a Hall of Fame player? You mentioned Stevenson, so obviously you think he is a Hall of Fame player, right?
We'll see. I'd love to sit in that room one time just to see what the hell those guys are thinking or what they have a conversation about. But I think he's got the bogeys. He played long enough. He played 13 years. He was in Pro Bowls. He was all pro. He got all the things that they're going to need to see. So I think, eventually he'll be in the Hall of Fame.
Are you disappointed with the process of Hall of Fame?
I don't know it, to be honest with you. I've gone to a bunch of the inductions for my teammates and for Eddie. But I think what you really, really need, and he'll probably have that being a Philly guy, is huge proponent. You need somebody that really kind of carries your candidacy. And I think that's something that's really important. And get in that room and really talk and really, something that is really important. And then you see the guys, the guys that I think that are first ballot are always kind of obvious. That was one of my favorite conversations. Talking to sports writers, and they go, "Oh yeah, I'll write the nomination process for Jerry Rice. I'll stand up and go, ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Rice, and sit down."
And said, "No, get this. I was told that was the process. Get this. I was told by the guys like Jason Cole and like Jared Bell that I forget. I don't think it was Ann that did it. It had to be somebody else that did that. They stood up and they went, Jerry Rice, and he sat back down. And Jerry Rice was so disappointed that Rice goes, how come he didn't say anything about me? And I told Jerry Rice the same thing. I go, Jerry, that's a compliment, okay? He doesn't have to go over your stats. You just go LT, and you sit down.
Yeah. I mean, the only other revelation I've got for you is water is wet.
Oh, my God. All right, hey. I want to ask you some college stuff because you work college football. Mm-hmm. Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels? If you're the Bears, who do you take?
They're gonna take Caleb Williams.
Mistake.
I'm pretty convinced of that. My favorite quarterbacks in this draft are Jalen Daniels and Michael Penix. Probably Bo Nix would be 2B. There's just, and it's not because he's from SC. There's just something about looking at him in some big games and looking at him, the way he handles himself, in front of the media and whatnot. And it's just, man, being a quarterback is as hard as it's ever been, especially if you're going to be successful. And you've got to be a distinct combination of things. And I'm not sure if he doesn't have a category or two missing that would make his development a lot easier.
Do you know what? I'll tell you what Dion told Michael Irvin, who Michael Irvin told me this about Caleb. The great quarterbacks never lose eyesight down the field. When there's some pressure around him and he gets moved around in the pocket, he takes his eyes down the field and he looks around him and he doesn't continue to stick in the pocket. Now, pocket presence, as you know, Randy, that's part of the game, and that's the game back there in that pocket. You got to have toughness, and you can't be deterred when you got blitzers coming around him. Mm-hmm. And I thought anytime people brought pressure on him at Southern Cal, I went like this. I don't know. I mean, I see him jittery, and I think they moved him off the point. And Dion doesn't think his game's going to translate to the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there's certain things. He's got the arm. His arm is really impressive. And, at his workout, I'm sure everybody that was present was just oohing and on. But, when you get in that workout, are you throwing that pass that has to go over a 6'2", 6'3" linebacker and has to have enough zip on it to get to the right place, but not so much that it flies into the hands of the safety behind it and it can fit in that 5-yard window, that horizontal slot you're throwing into between the coverages. And the really good ones, the Jalen's and other kind of guys like that. You see Tua do it, and Tua's got a gun, but Tua can throw touch passes. Brock Purdy can throw touch passes. A lot of those guys that can really do it, they can throw those touch passes. Mahomes can throw any pass with either hand, it seems like. I just don't think the same of him. And be able to throw those passes at times where you're going to have the faith to throw it as you're getting the crap knocked out of you, and know that you have the faith that you're delivering that spot that's 15 yards down the field, not 17, not 13, 15 yards down the field. It's 7 feet off the ground. And your guy's going to go get it by the sideline. You'll throw it in a good enough spot where you can come down with 2 feet in bounds, and have that kind of touch as you're getting drilled. And it's a rare thing. There's not that many guys have it, and that's why they make so much money to do it.
Absolutely. And a couple last questions here for you. This is why Herm Edwards in the last hour, who had Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, before he transferred to LSU. He compared him to Randall. He says he's that kind of guy with athleticism and he just looks down the field and he's got a big arm and he's big play. And I asked him about the transfer. He said he walked in, Herm looked him in the face, and he goes, Coach, I'm going to go to LSU. And you know why? Because it was nil and it was all that. And it was Herm was getting some heat from the administration. So he knew he was going to go. But Herm was like, you have to go. And Herm goes, I talk to him every day. I love the kid. Yeah. So, I mean, me, in my opinion, I think of all the quarterbacks in that draft, I think it's him. And like you said, do you pick Penix because of some of the wars that he's been through and have the comebacks with Indiana injuries, and he goes up to Washington, has success? Do you like to see guys like that?
Yeah, I really do. I like that. I like the way he handles himself just across the board, not only in front of the media, but on the sidelines, everything. There's something about him, I think, that is kind of special. And maybe those injuries, are something that NFL teams are going to look at and, we're going to stay away. That just means somebody's going to get him in a lot better spot than they should. That's the only thing there. And as far as Jalen goes, tell me the last guy. Look at what he did. You look at some of those games he played in and tell me the last guy that did what he did. The last guy that ran for those kind of yards, the guy that threw for those kind of yards and didn't throw for that many interceptions. They don't do that.
No, I mean, in that conference too.
Yeah.
Because you're going against the elite DBs in the country that are going to be high volume guys going into that draft too. So, I mean, I always look at it that way too, Randy. Like when you look at Big 12, someone goes, well, this guy threw for 400, 600 yards in the Big 12. I'm like, I'm not sure that's a big deal. But when you throw for 600 yards in the Southeastern Conference against a team in the SEC, there's an NFL guy and there's a couple NFL guys on that other roster over there. That's not normal. And so I just think there's something special about him. I want to leave you with this. I got asked a question the other day. I did a show and someone goes, what do you make of Mahomes and the comparisons with Brady? And I said, I don't think those comparisons. I think it's more Montana, and I'll tell you why. Joe didn't need superstars around him to win. And I go, I'm not saying Brady had a ton of them, but Joe, it was a luxury added because of a good organization. As you guys got better, they got better in the front office adding players around Joe. But Randy, in my opinion, Joe didn't need superstar players to win Super Bowls. And I'm not taking anything away from the O-line or anybody, but I mean, there was no Jerry Rice on those teams. I mean, am I right? The comparison is more about Montana and Mahomes than it is Mahomes and Brady.
Yeah, I mean, the natural association for people of this era is to default to Brady because of the sort of dynastic feel of what they got going on. How many Super Bowls they've been, how many Super Bowls they've won, the way that he's played in the big games. I look at a guy, you look at Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. How happy is he? He gets Henry with him. That might be the one thing he was looking for, to have a closer. And that's something that, maybe Pacheco in Kansas City, that Mahomes had a closer. Brady never really had a big-time closer. They had some free agent backs that kind of rotated through.
Sony Michel, guys like that. They weren't real frontline dudes.
Yeah, guys like Dylan and whatnot that were guys you could give the ball to in the fourth quarter. Yeah. You're about to find out, in Baltimore what that whole fourth quarter thing is. But in this era, in these let's grab it from 15 on. Yeah, I think it's a warranted comparison because he's how old is he? Was he 29 years
27?
old? 27. So come on, he's got a chance. He's got a chance to do a Barry Sanders. By the time he's 30 years old, 3 or 4 years from now, a couple of Super Bowls won, more, he's got a chance to just the happy trails into the sunset. like Jim Brown and Barry and those guys did, with more in the tank, but just going, you know what? You're no longer challenging to me. I'm out of here.
I'm going to sneak one more in on you. Aaron Donald, Randy White. Who would you not want to look forward to blocking?
I'd probably say Aaron. I loved Randy.
Holy cow!
Randy was quick.
You love the Road Runner, huh?
I like. He hasn't changed, Dan.
No, he has.
He played that way in high school. He played that way in college. How many guys just have not that he's boxed into a style, but he just aggravated everybody.
Oh, he killed people at Pitt.
He looked like he could still play.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 more years, but he's going, okay, I'll see you. Maybe he'll show up in a spaghetti Western somewhere.
Moses, it was great getting your prophecy today. I want to thank you very much for doing that so much for me, man, and finding time as you always do. Randy Cross, thank you so much for doing this.
It's an easy thing to grow hair. I don't know if you know that, but it's an easy thing to grow hair.
I'm Italian. Hair grows in places I don't want it to grow, so let me leave it there.
All right, Dan. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it. I love Randy Cross, man. Absolutely cool. Hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.